I would highly advise you to type the question in the chat. We have 2 people ready to take down your question, who will then present those questions to me so we can get through some of the questions. Also, while you wait and keep yourself muted, again, please change your screen name to your name, for example, James Borkman, and then the company you work for example, PBC, just like it says here. I'd also like you at this time to add your name to the chat. I need your full name, James Borkman, and your company name, PBC. I see that many of you are already proficient at this. Steve, David, Jennifer, thank you very much. We'll go ahead and wait a few minutes, get started about 6 or 7 after to give those people who are late the opportunity to join so they don't miss any of this key information for this request for qualifications. Thank you again for being on time, and thank you again for your patience. We'll get back to you shortly.
I have a call with the mayor's office. Hold on a second.
I'm on a conference call for. Okay. Can you do me a favor? I don't know how appropriate it is, but why is that?
All right, thank you again, everyone, for joining. We'll give it 1 more minute and then get started. I know that many of you have time constraints today. Again, I'd like to thank everyone for joining. I know this is quite a large meeting. We were anticipating 50 to 100 people. So thank you again for your interest in working with the PBC. While you're waiting, again, please type your name in the chat. We need this for attendance purposes. Also, please change your name. You can change your name on Zoom, please, to your first and last name and then the company you're representing so we can have an accurate representation of who's attended the request for qualifications pre-submission conference. And then once again, the Q&A will take place at the end. As we're going along, if you'd like, you can please type your question in the chat, and I have 2 individuals from the procurement department who will then track that information. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone. My name is James Borkman. I'm the Director of Procurement for the Public Building Commission of Chicago. This morning, we're here for an RFQ for various specialty services. We have 6 specialty services that we create pre-qualified pools for. We'll go over those momentarily. I'd like to thank you for taking time out of your day to join us. Brief overview of the agenda. We'll start with introductions. We'll have a brief program overview. I'll detail the procurement strategy that we're using for this. I'll go over the evaluation and selection process. And finally, we're going to hear from our compliance department before going into our Q&A session. So let's start with introduction. Again, I'm James Borkman, Director of Procurement for the Public Building Commission of Chicago. I'd like to start by introducing the contract officer for this contract, Miguel.
Miguel Fernandez.
He's shy. Miguel Fernandez is the contract officer for this. He is the sole point of contact. There is to be no communication with any other PBC employee, any other PBC representative. Miguel Fernandez is the sole point of contact. We also have many keys from the procurement department on. I believe we also have our director of development on.
Thank you, James, as I learned how to work the mute button. Ray Gitteroff, PBC. Thank you for joining, everyone.
Thank you, Ray, for being here. Obviously, many of you know that Ray is in charge of our development and construction side. Many of you work with him and his project managers. We also have Lisa Gitteroff on.
Good morning, Public Building Commission.
Good morning, Lisa. And then I believe we also have our Director of Compliance on the phone, who you're all familiar with, Patrice Doyle.
morning, Patrice Doyle, Director of Compliance.
Good morning, Patrice. From the PBC, we also have a few other employees on. We have our Director of Board Governance, Mary Pat Whitney, and we're very grateful for Brian Payne, our Communications Director, who's responsible for making sure this is a flawless presentation. So thanks to Brian Payne. I also have Minnie Keys from my department on the line. If we can briefly rather skip over the potential respondents, as we have close to 100 people in the meeting, we'll skip over that, and we'll skip over the subcontractors and suppliers in the interest of time. So I'd briefly like to go over the program overview. The general PBC program remains the same. These contracts, these requests for qualifications for our various specialty services, which include environmental engineering, environmental renovation and demolition, our geotechnical investigation, surveyor, traffic study, and ITL, or material testing services, will likely remain unchanged. However, as a result of the pandemic, we had a delayed qualifications process, and we are looking to requalify each of the 6 pools. This will be based as a task order-based master agreement, the same as it has been now. What does that mean for those of you that have never worked with the PBC before? These task order-based master agreements are anticipated to last for 5 years for a set amount of money and are handled via a rotational basis, meaning that as projects have a need for one of the specialty services, a consultant is identified and a request for proposal is sent to that consultant. They return the proposal, negotiation takes place, and if it's approved, a task order is then issued up against the master contract amount. These are multi-year, multi-facility, and multi-agency agreements. Your agreement is only with us, but our clients are various departments from the city of Chicago, sister agencies, Cook County, and other departments or agencies sometimes in the state. So I briefly want to let Ray talk about what scope we look for in each of these specialty services that we're requiring, because I think it's important that the scope, the breadth and depth of the scope of each of these is briefly highlighted. Each of you has access to the RFQ on our website and is fully downloadable, so you can go through the details there. But I want Ray to have a chance to speak to the importance of this program and briefly the scope that each of the specialty service providers provide. So Ray, if you want to just talk more broadly, briefly, and then I'll go through the scope for you.
Sure. Thank you, James. And I appreciate, PBC appreciates everyone that's joined the phone call. We rely heavily on your services, from environmental engineering through independent testing laboratory services from our material testing sub-consultants. As we undertake work from various clients, the work varies from renovation work to new annexes, to new additions, civil related work, and even work with one of our new partners at CDOT. We feel that PBC provides that value to its chairman, our board of commissioners, and the various communities that we're investing in. And that's a key element of our work, our investments throughout our communities and investments in our professional service providers, including all of you that are on this phone call, along with all of our architects and engineers. This is intended to be a partnership with all of you as you become an extension of our program. The technical aspects of your services, obviously, a lot of you that have worked with us or are currently working with us, without question is incredible, right? So the technical aspects of the environmental engineering, whether it's related to investigative work on site or investigative assessment or investigative and/or assessments of existing buildings, the geotechnical services that are paramount to how we design or verifying those subgrade conditions for use by the architect and its engineers that may or may not impact how we phase and permit work, the surveying information that is critical a critical part of our review with the Department of Buildings and/or zoning and/or our zoning attorneys, along with inspections during construction for conformance with the contract documents. I think that all of those services are a vital part of what we do. Every single consultant that we work with currently under their current agreements that James alluded to that have expired, which is one of the reasons, which is the reason why we're in the process of re-procuring the work, is incredible. But beyond that, it's what is the value added by your firm? It's, believe it or not, it's more than your technical capabilities, and the capacity that within your firm to deliver or provide those project deliverables, but it's also providing input, having a voice at the table related to strategies, phasing, scheduling, lessons learned, and best practices. So we are looking for those partnerships. Yes, James will review the technical aspects and requirements of your submissions, but beyond that, and James and his team will review with everyone on this phone call sort of those prerequisites that are part of your submission as laid out in the procurement requirements, but also, what is the value? What sets you apart from your competitor? Where is the value add? All of you that are currently working with us absolutely provide valuable input in terms of those specific project deliverables in accordance with the contract documents. But beyond that, if we've all learned anything, right prior to the pandemic and the post-pandemic impacts to our industry, it does come down to that extra effort or value to assist, to not just determine whether or not a site needs to be enrolled in the IEPA's SRP program, right? It's not just that. It's all of the intricacies that lead up to that decision and the impacts of that decision, along with how we assess pre-existing conditions in these buildings, to develop these environmental scope sheets, to coordinate that work from an environmental perspective with the architect and its consultants to make sure that we have a comprehensive set of contract documents, to make sure that the geotechnical investigative work is responsive and compliant with the chief geotechnical engineer's requirements from the city of Chicago. And we all know how that goes, but it's sort of bringing all of you to the table with us as an extension of the PBC. So it's not that you're going to get in the car with us and go for a ride. It's that you're helping us manage the ride. You're helping guide the ride, because all of that matters. The planning and design work that we do prior to procuring the contractor is the most important element of our work. If we don't plan properly, if we don't design properly, if we're not coordinating properly, as you all know, it leads to different challenges after we've gone through the procurement process. So as important as the architects and engineers are to the PBC, meaning structural engineers, civil engineers, so on and so forth, so are all of your firms. Because without your help, without your input, without that information, there is no work to procure. And the PBC takes a lot of pride in its work. We continue to implement enhancements to how we manage work, how we plan and how we design, when and what we upload for permit, how we introduce projects to the Department of Buildings, how we review those on-site conditions with inspectors, how we specify work as it relates to deep foundations and what that means, and ensuring that the survey that's provided by our surveyors is responsive to the project requirements. So I think what you're hearing in my voice is beyond the technical capabilities that you all have that you're going to demonstrate by way of your submission. It's that value add, an extension of the Public Building Commission as our partner to provide efficient solutions, right? And not everything is going to be easy. There's going to be a lot of challenging situations. And the consultants, all of you that are on this phone call, that set themselves apart is by being available, and being accountable. And it starts with me first. So if I'm not available and I'm not accountable, the program goes nowhere. And that's what we're looking for in these partnerships from all of you to be an extension of the PBC. And we have many other partners that we work with, obviously, that are not part of this procurement, but it's one team that's going to drive and manage the work. So James, I think I just wanted to emphasize that specifically in how much the development group, which includes my director of planning and development and my director of construction and all of our development staff, inclusive of all of our clients. We coordinate these requirements with our clients, all of them, which we appreciate. And there are a lot of different sort of aspects to that as well, as you all know. And some of you are working with some of our clients. So the parameters and the requirements should be similar. Expectations may be a little bit different because what's expected of us is to ensure that we are providing efficient solutions. If we don't manage this part of our work properly, then that leads to impacts during the work. And those are the things that we're trying to avoid. And even when we do our best to avoid the impacts, whatever the impact may be from environmental through traffic studies, it doesn't matter. It's who's available at the table to provide recommendations. And some of you are very good at that, by the way. And a lot of you have experienced a lot of that with me. So James, that's what we're looking for in these partnerships, to give everybody a voice at the table, that there's not one person more important than the next, that it's one team approach to all of the work that's listed there under the specialty services providers that we're looking for. And there are some lessons learned with that, right? And in my opinion, those consultants that are currently with us, I don't think many of them, in fact, none of them have reached out to me to say, hey, what can we do better? And what can PBC do better first, but then what can our partners do better as well, so we can enhance that relationship and develop a complete product set of documents prior to procuring the work. So clearly the goals and objectives that are listed here, I'm not going to read from the screen there, James, but all of this information is listed in our procurement with regard to the planning phase of the environmental services, along with the environmental design phase services. We do have a environmental manager in True North. Ryan Ledoux provides that on my behalf, on our behalf. And then clearly some of the goals and objectives related to that, to the renovation work and or demolition work. As some of you know, if you're following our PBC updates and alerts, not all of our work is new construction. A good part of that work is our pre-existing facilities, whether it's assets owned by and managed by AIS or other pre-existing facilities and assets that require work or renovation and assessments. And some of you are involved in that already. That's a big part of our work. Not understanding what these requirements are, not understanding the scope as part of that overall assessment affects our ability to budget properly, make recommendations on the type of procurement for construction, and project or provide accurate projections to our clients with regard to funding requirements. And I think that can't be taken for granted. I am not suggesting that the people on this phone call take it for granted. I'm just saying, as a design and construction community, I think those details are the most important part of our work. And everything that's listed here, those environmental consultants that are on the phone obviously understand that. As far as the geotechnical investigative work is concerned, the geotechnical engineers on this phone call know better than I do that not every project is the same. Not every deep foundation design or shallow spread footing design is the same. Obviously, geography, location, the Chicago fire, proximity to the lake, and all sorts of other conditions impact these recommendations. Thank you. As far as the surveyors are concerned, Obviously, a lot of these parameters will be provided by the PBC. Surveyors' work is important to our architects and engineers, as whether it's an Alta survey, boundary survey, and as you can see, all the other surveys listed here. And this information is vital in order to establish contract limits, property line, limits of work, and information required by the Department of Buildings and or zoning and or as part of some overall plan development process. And this is, some may think that this is the easiest part of our work. I happen to think that this is probably one of the more important aspects of our work, right? Because without properly benchmarking what we're doing on site, nothing else matters. So we rely heavily on our surveyors to provide that technical expertise. Similarly, with the traffic study or traffic study consultants, those traffic studies that are provided, believe it or not only are they required with regard to what the Department of Buildings and or others within the building department may need, including zoning and our zoning attorneys and all that comes with that, 100% of the time. When we are in different communities, right, delivering the investment, whatever the investment may be, new streets or a new school or a new fire station. Imagine we're coming into your community and we're about to build in your backyard. Your questions are going to be potentially, well, what is the impact to traffic? How does this affect my life? School starts and lets out at certain times. Is it going to impact your life, right? The way that we live in our different communities. And what is that traffic study based on? The what, the where, the why. And we've run into that often. And often we are in community meetings relying on our traffic study consultants to provide the information that's listed on the screen that you see here. And with that input, we're able to make determinations on entrance, exit, traffic patterns, school buses, parent drop-off, pickup, so on and so forth. And all of this affects, right? Because maintaining the integrity of the information as part of our planning and design phases is the most important thing that we can do. Maintaining the integrity and the information that we're providing to the residents of the city and these various communities that we invest in. The other important part of our work, as some of you know, as material testing and inspection firms, or ITLs, it's not just inspecting for conformance with the contract documents. It's also understanding the project requirements, the specifications developed by the architect, the material testing and inspection plan developed by the architect based on the specifications that are delivered or sent to our ITLs for proposals. So whether it's floor flatness testing or spray on fireproofing testing, vibration monitoring, everything that goes with that. I think not having input from the ITL during that phase, it's more than just Miguel Fernandez sending the RFP to the ITL and the ITL saying, this is what it's going to cost by category. You know, it's schedule driven, it's sequence driven, it's, you know, what are the parameters for the time of completion requirements? What are those milestones? What are we actually building? And is our testing plan consistent with the requirements and the specifications? Some of you on this phone call have gone above and beyond, which I appreciate. It's something that we implemented in the early 2000s, knowing that when we're going to go out on any site and drill caissons, whether it's Decatur, whether it's Saguenash or Hancock or Kennedy King or any other project that we've been involved in, or at least I've been involved in since 1999, understanding that impact and how we manage expectations. And a couple of you have done a great job in preparing frequently asked questions so that we can review that information with our community, with our stakeholders, our clients, so that it's understood. What is the difference between sound and vibration? What are we doing about it? How do we calibrate? When do we stop? And what happens if there's a deficiency? What are the expectations from the ITL when deficiencies are noted? How do we reconcile that during construction and not after the fact? So it's really that sort of partnership during construction where the ITL is providing that assurance that the work conforms with the contract documents. Probably one of the more important things that we do during construction. Of course, there will be challenges. Of course, there will be deficiencies. It's what do we do when the deficiency is identified? So it's more than just here's my report. Here I highlighted it in red, big, bold, red letters, deficient. Okay, well, what are we doing to mitigate that deficiency? What are our options? The options may not be rip all the work out and start over, right? That may not be available to us, but really establishing the requirements and the expectations during the pre-installation conferences with the ITL and the architect and the contractor and the subcontractor. So it's understood what we're testing, what we're inspecting, and why. So it doesn't come back to the ITL. Well, the ITL is being too detailed. The ITL is not understanding, and that can't happen. And over the last almost 25 years, right, we like to think that we've learned a lot, and we learn more from the challenges than we do from our successes, right? It's the challenging projects that make us better so that we don't make the same mistakes repeatedly.
Thank you, Ray. And I think it's important to reiterate that the work that we do at the PBC is just as Ray said, it's important to our communities and you're our partner in this work. So Ray, I really appreciate you saying that. So briefly, I'd like to go over the procurement details and what's actually being requested. We've already received a number of questions. There will likely be an addenda or several addendum or addenda that are or are issued. And so we'll briefly walk through this. Hopefully we answer some of these questions. So the RFQ was issued on May 31st. It's an open RFQ. It was put out into the world. Those of you that already have existing agreements with the PBC, you received a note from myself that those agreements expire December 31st, 2023. Those will not be renewed. If you wish to continue working with the PBC, which judging by the 100 people on this call, I presume you do, please submit a new RFQ. If you don't submit an RFQ, your contract will be wrapped up and that will be the end of the task order-based master agreement that you have currently. So the RFQ went out on the street to everyone May 31st. The pre-submission conference is today. We have a questions deadline as noted in the RFQ of June 28th at 4 p.m. Central Time. Please abide by that questions deadline. If you have questions, please submit them to Miguel, again, the sole point of contact, no later than that time. We will do our best to issue addenda as necessary, but the goal is to not move the submission deadline, which is currently scheduled for July 13th at 11 a.m. We highly encourage you to submit this electronically. In the past, we accepted these large packets of printed material for ease of review, for your own sanity, and certainly for my staff's sanity and myself. We would strongly recommend that you submit these via a single searchable PDF and separate out the financial information. I'll go through more of those details as we move forward. Following the submission deadline, we will review the submissions. We will enter into a pricing request phase where we're going to ask for very specific pricing from your firm based on very specific tasks. We'll then enter into a negotiation phase, and it is our anticipation that we will take one or more firms for each of the specialty services that Ray just so eloquently described to our December PBC board meeting. It's anticipated that the term of these contracts will be 5 years with 2 one-year optional extensions. All documents are available on the PBC website. I've taken a screenshot of that PBC website here. You can see all of them listed. You simply click and download the RFQ. The due date again is July 13 at 11 a.m. Please submit your responses electronically. Any requests for information or RFIs must go to Miguel. Miguel's email is miguel.fernandez@cityofchicago.org. The deadline currently, as I stated earlier, is June 28th at 4 p.m. As of right now, excuse me, no addenda have been issued. I'm going to briefly go over the evaluation and selection criteria. All evaluation and selection criteria can be found in section 7 of each of the RFQs. The criteria differs for each specialty service. We have very specific requirements, for example, that apply to geotech, but do not apply to material testing or traffic study. And the same is true of the inverse. So for those purposes, we're relying on your good offices to do an in-depth dive into the specific information we are looking for, so our evaluation teams can really get to know your firms and ensure that you're going to be good partners, not only in working with the PBC, but in oftentimes representing the PBC and our clients in various manners and methods. Each of the RFQs require additional information. This is the same. The first 10 are all the same for all specialties. There's an Exhibit 1 asking for relevant experience. There's a sample task order packet so you can understand. Those of you who've worked with the PBC obviously understand our task order process. For those of you who have not, you can understand how our task order process works. There's a sample notice to proceed. There's an MWBE and a WBE past participation form that requires a minimum of 3 examples of prior projects, which Patrice will talk more in depth about our compliance standards shortly. And then there are the 5 attachments that we require of all of our professional service providers: legal actions, a disclosure affidavit, a disclosure of the retained parties, the special conditions regarding the utilization of minority and women-owned businesses, which includes a joint venture affidavit if you are forming a joint venture. We have several joint ventures currently under contract. We encourage joint ventures, especially those that utilize minority and women-owned businesses. And we also have our insurance requirements. Finally, the last attachment is a sample form of agreement. It's anticipated that the form of agreement we enter into with each of you, should you be fortunate enough to work with the PBC, would be substantially similar to this. Last but not least, if you're a material testing firm seeking to submit your RFQ, there are 2 very important pieces of information you will have to supply in addition to the 10 listed above, as well as all of the information in the RFQ. And that is an application for acceptance of material testing facility, so we can understand that you understand what that looks like and how to fill it out. And second, you need to detail your procedures for structural steel fabrication inspection, particularly towards stamped manifests. I know we have at least 1 or 2 questions in the chat, so thank you for putting your questions there. The submission requirements. Again, the PBC strongly encourages you to submit your submissions electronically. We need 1 complete copy of the RFQ document and all of its attendant parts, and we need them tabbed and page numbered. Everything should be labeled what it is. Everything must be submitted to the PBC in a single searchable PDF document. We need these to be not scanned copies of documents, not scanned copies of pieces of information we're seeking from your firm. This should be searchable so that whenever we're looking for specific pieces of information, our evaluators can find it easily. Once you've compiled all these documents, they should be sent to bids@pbcchicago.com and Miguel Fernandez at cityofchicago.org. This is a insurance policy on our part, so for some reason Miguel's email is down or doesn't work, we still get it through bids. If you do want to submit a hard copy submission, there are several items which you will need to submit. We'll need one signed, originally in blue ink, single-sided bound original, and it needs to be marked original. We'll need two double-sided unbound paper copies so that we can copy and distribute those to our evaluation committees. We'll also need 4 electronic copies on USB flash drives, which must be in a single searchable PDF and tabbed. So if you're already doing that, what does that tell you, ladies and gentlemen? Chances are you could just do the electronic submission anyway. We'd also like one single-sided bound copy of your financial statements, but those need to be put in a separate envelope and they need to be labeled as such. You will then bring those to the Public Building Commission. Most of you know we're located in the Richard J. Daley Center at 50 West Washington on the 2nd floor. The PBC offices will be open from 9:30 a.m. and you must have them dropped off by the drop-off time, which is 11 a.m. Anything received after that will be dismissed. Finally, I briefly wanted to highlight what happens after we receive your submissions. So once we've received your submissions, and should the evaluators deem your firm qualified, you'll be invited to submit pricing. This process involves filling out a number of other documents, which we will provide to you and cannot be altered or changed. We need just the numbers in the pricing documents. When you're invited to submit the pricing, we need you to follow all the instructions and information contained in the pricing requests. Anything that requires a specific format, structure, or the services, we will provide and review based on the information that you submit. We don't have a timeline for that, but again, our goal is to submit all of this information to all of the qualified firms to our December board meeting. Finally, as the pricing and evaluation next step states, that once we review your pricing, we'll enter into a negotiation phase, and we reserve the right to request a last, best, and final offer before determining whether or not we should pull your firm under contract. Once we do accept your pricing, or should you be lucky enough to have the PBC accept your pricing, we'll enter into a task order-based master agreement of the same version that I described earlier, and that would then last, it's anticipated, for 5 years with the option for 2 one-year extensions. At this time, I'd like to turn the meeting over to Patrice, who can discuss more details regarding the PBC's compliance with our M and WBE participation. So Patrice.
Good morning, everyone. I am Patrice Dole, Director of Compliance for the PBC. And as James and Ray went over the various specialties and the specific requirements for the specialties, MWBE compliance also have specific arrangements and agreements for each specialty. So environmental engineering services, the goal is 25% MBE and 5% WBE participation. Environmental rental demo services is 25% MBE and 5% WBE. Geotechnical service is 30% MBE, WBE, which is an aggregate goal. It can be met by a MBE, WBE, or a combination of both. Survey services is 30% MBE, WBE aggregate. Traffic study is 30% MBE, WBE aggregate, and material testing service is 25% MBE and 5% WBE. So just make sure whatever your specialty that you are applying for, that you understand what the MBE and WBE requirements are to that specific specialty services. We only accept certification from the City of Chicago or Cook County, and they must be certified in the scope of work that they're performing. And they have to have a current certification, again, only from the City of Chicago or Cook County. for MBE participation and WBE participation. Next, please. If you, you skip if you are deciding to do a joint venture with an MBE or a WBE, which would be a great opportunity and more than likely will help you in achieving your goals, you must complete the Schedule B and include your joint venture contract agreement, also a certification letter from the City of Chicago and or Cook County. Next, please. In addition, with each task order, once you have been selected, you have to complete a Schedule D and a Schedule C for each task order. Next. And although these forms they haven't changed over time, I still have difficulties receiving them completed correctly. The Schedule D identifies the MBE and WBE participation, and this should be completed by the specialty firm. And this is the credit amount for your sub-consultant, your MBE and or WBE. Next, James. Oh, I'm sorry, can you go back? And just as a reminder, the percentages of MBE and WBE participation is based on the total task order amount. Next, James. Schedule C. This should be completed by the sub-consultant, the MBE and or WBE sub-consultant. Some of the issues and concerns that we have come up often is the subcontracting levels for sub-consultants, that this is normally left blank, and or if they're subcontracting to another sub-consultant, the percentages are not filled in. So just make sure that information is there. This is a great opportunity for whatever specialty services that you are getting ready to provide, is to seek your MBE and WBE consultants now. Don't wait until you are selected and then you start receiving task orders. This is a great opportunity to seek those MBE and WBEs that are in your field that you can utilize once awarded, or you can joint venture with, because again, once awarded, each task order will have a MBE and WBE participation requirement as to your specific services. So this is a great opportunity to start reaching out to MBE and WBE consultants.
Thank you, Patrice.
Thanks.
I would like to emphasize the MWBE component of these opportunities. We are very proud of the success rate that we've had at the Public Building Commission. Patrice and her team have done an excellent job of increasing the participation of minority and women-owned businesses, especially in our specialty consultant contracts. So we highly, highly encourage you to partner, joint venture, mentor, reach out, and meet the goals established for each of your contracts, those goals being what Patrice stated earlier. Finally, before we go to our question and answer session, I wanted to point out that Miguel Fernandez is the sole point of contact for this contract. If you have questions, if you have concerns, if you'd like interpretations, everything must go to Miguel's attention. His address is right there on the screen, miguel.fernandez@cityofchicago.org. With that being said, I'll briefly go through the questions that have been asked in the chat. Michelle Carpenter, I'm not quite sure I understand your question, so if you'd like to clarify. PBR already has an environmental consultant, a PM reviewer with True North. Do you need bids for remediation environmental PM services? If that's a question, if you're looking to provide environmental remediation services, part of environmental reno demo or environmental engineering services, and you're not a prime and a sub, then you would need to work with whoever is submitting their RFQ to either joint venture or to work as a sub-consultant. Does that answer your question?
Not really, no. Ray had mentioned that you were already partnered with True North. I just wanted to know if that part of the contract was actually up for renewal, or do we need to contact True North to work only with them?
I understand. No, you can submit in your own right. No, all contracts will expire at the end of this year. We may have a current agreement with them, but all contracts expire December 31st, 2023. So if you wish to work with them or wish to work on your own, you would need to either work with them to submit an RFQ, or you can submit your own RFQ utilizing the forms on our website.
Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you for your clarification. Rajan Saha asks, Geotech, do the consultants need to submit the City of Chicago Building Department Form F during the permit process? Well, it would depend. Are you asking, Rajan, are you available to speak? Can you clarify your question? If you're asking about a specific task order based project, then it would depend as part of that permit process. But if you're asking for this submission, for this RFQ, then it would, if it's listed as one of the documents necessary to provide as part of the RFQ, then yes. Does that help?
No, this is not. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Did that answer your question?
Kind of, but this is more during the permit process, the City of Chicago Building Department, especially of deep foundation, when it gets done in bedrock, they want the Form F to fill out, which is kind of summary of the geotechnical report.
Right.
To get the permit.
Yeah, so this is, yeah, so as part of the RFQ evaluation, it says prove that you're able to meet all of the requirements for the Department of Buildings, specifically for deep foundations or even a shallow spread. As a result, you'd need to put that somewhere in the RFQ. So follow
Okay.
the instructions in the RFQ.
Okay.
Thank you. Manan, is the financial statement, I should say, are the financial statements and related information to be added to the submission checklist or separately or both? If you're submitting electronically, Manan, the financial
Yes.
statements must be submitted separately as it's clearly stated in the RFQ. The financial statements are confidential pieces of information that the Public Building Commission destroys immediately upon reviewing.
Okay,
If you're
thank you.
submitting hard copy, they need to be submitted separately, labeled confidential, labeled financial information, and again, they will be destroyed. So a blank tab called tab 4 for most of your submissions will be placed in your single searchable PDF. The tab 4 will say see separately submitted financial statements.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Thank you, Manan. Another question. Oh, wait, Manan, is that the same question? Did I answer
Yeah,
both?
same question.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Because
Uh,
this Zoom register in my name, that's why it's coming my name.
Understood. Thank you. Arnold Kasserman, for larger project sites, does the PBC expect a single firm to be able to meet all of the service specialty requirements? Or will some projects be divided among several firms? This is a good Ray question. In my time at the PBC, we expect that they are not divided among several firms. However, Miguel might be able to speak to the fact in the past whether we have divvied up a task order such that one project required different consultants. Miguel?
We might require different consultants at different, if we do a certain phase, and then we're gonna do another phase. We've had one project that I can recall where the different phases had different consultants, but for the most part, same consultant throughout.
Thank you. Arnold, does that answer your question? All right. Manan, I see that you have another question. Does the geotech need to provide clarification and recommendation during the construction phase increase of changes in soil conditions? Or I guess this is Victor's question through Manan.
Yes.
Yes, it is. Hello, I'm sorry, we have in the case of soil conditions, so as you said, does the geoengineer need to provide a clarification an additional recommendation in the case of soil conditions change?
So if there, I mean, that would depend on the project. Again, this is an RFQ, Victor. So the goal here is to determine whether or not your firm would actually be capable of doing something like that. It's not about specific requirements for various project or a specific project or various requirements for various projects. The goal here is to respond to the request for qualifications, responding specifically to the information we requested. In the instance of your question, one of the qualifications for geotech is, do you have the ability to meet a flexible requirement or an immediate need request from a project manager for a specific change to the original proposal? Sounds like something that might be happening here. My advice to anyone that has a similar question to this is respond to the RFQ, read the RFQ, respond to the RFQ.
Okay, thank you, James. I understand. I understand now. We understand the format now. I understand.
Gotcha. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
I see where you're coming from, but the specifics of a project are not what concern us. Your ability to handle the specifics of the projects.
Yeah, sure.
Understood.
Yeah,
Understood.
and we are very familiar with the format. If they want, that's fine.
Gotcha. Thank you, guys. Brendan Quealy, if a firm is pre-qualified in only one of the two environmental categories, does that negatively impact their ability to be assigned work? No. Generally, as you'll see in the RFQ, it's a good question. Generally, if you take the time to review the task order process, we have a number of ways we can issue task orders. But if you're pre-qualified as an environmental engineering firm and not qualified as an environmental renovation demolition firm, this does not preclude you from getting work. If there is environmental engineering work and we are on a rotational basis, you will simply be followed through the rotation. And as such, your firm would not be negatively impacted. However, the inverse is if you wanted to apply for both environmental or all or 3, 4, 5, or all 6 specialty services, as long as you're qualified to do that, you would be able to. There's nothing precluding you from applying for all 6, provided you're qualified. Does that answer your question, Brendan?
It does. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Angela Roberts, is there a file size limit for electronic submissions of proposed responses? Angela, this is my language. I like this question. Thank you very much for bringing it up. There is. Our emails do not accept large files. As such, and I should have stated this before, since we're asking you or requesting that you submit electronically, we would really appreciate it if you could send us a link to download your file, whether that be on an FTP site, Dropbox, or another secure method of transmission. Most of your firms, because we have done business with almost all of the firms on this call, from what I can tell, we have file sharing capabilities. We would very much appreciate that those large documents be placed via link. There's also the possibility that we may create a place for you to submit your RFQs. And if that is the case, we'll be sure to reach out and let you know, all of you know, via addenda. Did that answer your question, Angela?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Yeah, great question, by the way. Thank you for that. Arnold, again, by tabbed pages in the PDF document submission, does this suggest using PDF bookmarks or something else? Arnold, again, speaking my language, I like this. Yes, you can use bookmarks or you can use blank divider pages. Either way, we need to know that there is some separation and that each of the RFQ requirements based on the submission checklist, if you review the submission checklist, you'll see that it's tabbed out. We need our evaluators to be able to refer to those specific tabs. So you are more than welcome to use the bookmarks. You're also highly encouraged to supplement the bookmarks with physical blank page dividers labeled as tab blank, tab 1, 2, 3, etc. Does that help, Arnold? Got it. Perfect. All right. At this time, I believe I've answered all the questions that were in the chat. I'd very much like to thank everyone. Umar has a question. My understanding that each category is a separate submission or pre-qualification for 2 categories could be no. Excellent question, Umar. Each category is a separate submission. There are very specific requirements, including differing M and WBE requirements, contractual requirements, and other requirements for each of these specialty services. As a result, each of them have their own submission requirements. Does that answer your question, Umar?
Yes, thank you very much. Appreciate
Okay.
it.
Miguel or Minnie, I know that you're watching the questions. Are there any other questions you received directly that I may not have?
No. I haven't.
Thank you, Minnie.
You're welcome.
You have one from Cal.
Yeah.
Oh,
Where he asks, can you speak to the preclusion for the firms working with PBC sister agencies on particular projects?
so Cal, excellent question. Cal's our Director of Design and Planning. Thank you, Cal, very much. At times, although we're working off of a pre-qualified pool and in rotation, at times we will have instances where we pick up a project mid-project or early in a project after the firm has already worked on that project for another agency. This frequently happens with our partners at the Chicago Board of Education. In that instance, there is the possibility where we would not be able to utilize you due to an agreement between the parties such that your firm would be excluded. If that's the case, we simply go to the next in rotation, and you are not marked as having been utilized in rotation. You're simply moved to the next following that rotation. All of this is explained in the RFQ, but Cal, excellent question to bring up. Miguel, you said there was a question.
One more from Arnold Cassidy.
Oh, can we receive and attend? Yeah. Oh, thank you. So as I was about to wrap up, Arnold, wow, this is a very good group. What will happen is this presentation is being recorded. So if you'd like to refer back to it, you will. These questions will be answered via addenda, and this will be sent out. The addenda will be sent out to the group. We'll also have the attendance sheet, a sign-in sheet, which will be posted on the RFQ page, which you can find on the PBC's website, pbcchicago.com, which all of you, of course, have already looked at because you have these great questions. And any information and addenda that are issued will also be posted there. It's a nice single stop for everyone to be able to review information, pertinent information regarding this RFQ. Right, you are correct, Brendan. This is a very good question. Can you confirm that the M and WBE Schedule C and D are not required for this submittal? That is correct, Brendan. What is required for this submittal is your commitment to comply with the goals set forth for the M and WBE requirements or goals set forth for the RFQ in each of your chosen submitted services. Does that answer your question, Brendan? Oh, go ahead, Patrice.
Although the Schedule Cs and Ds are not required, but if you decide to do a joint venture with an MBE or WBE, you have to submit their certification letters from the city of Chicago or Cook County.
Excellent point. Thank you, Patrice. Does that answer your question, Brendan?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Oh. No, Jennifer, excellent question. What if you are using what if you aren't doing a joint venture, but you're using a sub? That will come later. You may wish to include that information. Some of the RFQs request specific information. If you plan on using subs, whenever we get to the pricing information, we may be requesting specific information there. But generally, the subs can be chosen later as well. We highly encourage you reaching out during a request for proposal during the task order phase, should your firm be selected, to reach out to a number of subs. So that information is sometimes part of the RFQ. It depends on what you're submitting for, and sometimes not. So make sure you pay attention if it's required in your RFQ. Jennifer, does that answer your question?
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
You're welcome. Oh, sorry, you said, oh, my mistake. Are specialty firms evaluated on task orders with, so Cal's asking a good question. Are specialty firms evaluated on task orders with specific projects at their completion for standard of care? And if so, are negative engagements or lack of timely services impacting the use of their selection as part of the rotation? Yes, Cal. If selected firms who are part of the rotation schedule are not performing up to standards, they'll be sent, pursuant to their contract, they'll be sent a notification of cure letter provided a number of days pursuant to the contract to improve their performance. If they do not, that contract will then be canceled. Does that answer your question, Cal? Thank you. A lot of good questions, and I'm very appreciative for the questions. We'll make sure that all of these get into an addenda and issued out. With that, briefly, the next steps, not seeing any more questions, the next steps. So as you review your RFQs, you may encounter some specific questions for specific specialty services. Go ahead and reach out to Miguel. Remember, he's the sole point of contact for this procurement. Following your submission for the RFQ, there'll be an evaluation period. Because of the large amount of submissions, it's anticipated the evaluation period will take certainly several weeks to a few months. So you may not hear from us for an extended period of time following your submission. That doesn't mean that you haven't been selected. It simply means that we're expecting a large number of submissions, probably over 100, and we need extensive time to review the detailed information we're requesting from your firm. Once you do hear from us, as I said before, that'll be a request for a pricing. You'll submit that information in the format and with the specific information and the format that we requested. Again, there'll be an evaluation period, which again could take several weeks. We will then enter into a negotiation period for the pricing, possibly requesting a last best and final offer. At that point, it should be November, and we're looking to finalize our selection of firms at that time and take them to our December board meeting prior to the expiration of the existing contracts, which will all expire, as I've stated several times, December 31st, 2023. If you have a task order or requested to provide a service under those contracts, the agreement does allow for those services to be performed following the expiration of your contract, but once those services are complete, the contract will then be expired. Well, I really want to thank everyone for taking time. I know this is a long meeting on a Wednesday morning and everyone's very busy. It's very exciting to see that there are so many people that have worked with the PBC in the past, come back and show interest in continuing their excellent track record, really. As a brief data point, during the course of the last contract, last task order-based master agreement, which started in 2016, there have been over 308 task orders issued, and the total amount that was committed during that time was over $20 million. So this work really is meaningful for our smaller community-based organizations, and we're very proud of that fact. And we really look forward to seeing in your RFQs your commitment to continuing that track record. So with that, I will say thank you very much. I don't think I have any more questions. Miguel, give me a thumbs up if we're good.
We're good.
All right. Well, I very much appreciate all of you and all of your time. Again, this information will be available on the PBC's website, a recording of this presentation, pre-submission conference, as well as the sign-in sheet will be available here probably by tomorrow after we go through it. And the addendum, once we finalize the answers to that, will be posted there as well. So thank you again for joining. We appreciate